Hey guys, tonight we are stepping back in time, into the dim, dusty, and bewilderingly fragrant world of a 17th century apothecary. Imagine a place where medicine, magic, and commerce all swirl together in a cloud of botanical dust. You are the newest apprentice, and your first day on the job is just beginning, long before the sun has decided to join you. It's a world where the cure for a headache might involve a cheerfully prescribed glass of wine mixed with poppy, and the treatment for a chest cold looks suspiciously like candy. Frankly, your chances of surviving a serious illness are, let's say, variable. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's always lovely to know who's out there listening, so feel free to drop your location and what time it is in your part of the world in the comments below. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The floor is cold. That is the first thing your mind registers as you swing your legs out of the small cot tucked away in the attic. The floorboards are wide, rough-hewn oak, and they bite at the soles of your feet with the damp chill of pre-dawn London. Or perhaps it's Paris, or Amsterdam. The city doesn't matter as much as the time. It is the hour of ghosts and bakers, a time when the world is washed in shades of gray and deep blue, and the air is thin and sharp in your lungs. You don't need a candle. You know the path down the narrow, spiraling staircase by heart, your hand tracing the cool, slightly sticky wood of the guide rope bolted to the wall. With each step downward, the air changes. It grows heavier, thicker, and carries a scent so complex, so utterly overwhelming, that it feels like you're wading into a physical substance. This is the smell of your new life. It's the smell of the shop. You reach the ground floor and pause, letting your eyes adjust to the deeper darkness. Here, your first official task of the day, every day, is to open the shutters. You feel your way to the front of the shop, your fingers finding the massive wooden bar that secures the two halves of the front window shutters. It's heavy, and you have to put your shoulder into it, grunting softly as you lift it from its iron brackets. With a low thud, you set it on the floor. The shutters themselves are thick wood, designed to repel not just thieves, but the miasmas and ill humors that were thought to drift through the nighttime streets. You find the iron latch, swing one shutter open, and then the other. There's no sudden flood of golden light. Not yet. Instead, a weak, watery, gray luminescence seeps inside, illuminating a billion dancing motes of dust. And with the light comes the full, unrestrained olfactory assault. It's not a bad smell. Not like the street outside with its cocktail of mud, coal smoke, and horse manure. This is something else entirely. It's the smell of 1,000 stories. 1,000 remedies, 1,000 desperate hopes bottled and hung from the ceiling. Your nose tries to pick it all apart, a hopeless task. There's the sharp, clean, almost soapy scent of dried lavender, hanging in great purple bunches from the rafters. Beneath it, the deep, earthy, slightly dirty sock smell of valerian root, piled high in a wicker basket. A wave of sweet spice washes over from a set of wooden drawers: cinnamon, clove, and nutmeg, more valuable than the silver in some men's purses. It all mingles with the faint, unsettlingly sweet aroma of dried poppy heads, and the bitter, medicinal tang of wormwood. It's a perfume that is simultaneously calming and invigorating, a scent that says both sleep and cure in the same breath. As the light strengthens, the shop slowly reveals its secrets. It's a cavern of wooden shelves, drawers, and barrels. Light glints off the shoulders of countless glass jars, some clear, some a deep cobalt blue or forest green, filled with powders, seeds, and viscous-looking liquids. Bundles of herbs hang everywhere, rustling gently in the draft from the open window, looking like strange, sleeping creatures suspended in the gloom. On the main counter, the great brass balance scale sits waiting, its pans polished to a dull gleam, a silent judge of worth and dosage. And next to it, on a tall wooden lectern, sits the heart of the entire operation, the master's journal. It's a thick, leather-bound tome, its cover stained and worn, held shut by a simple leather tie. Within its pages are the recipes, the observations, and the secrets that separate a master apothecary from a common grocer, and that is an important distinction. Historians still argue whether apothecaries of this era were seen more as respected medical practitioners, close to physicians, or simply as skilled and specialized shopkeepers. Looking around, you can see the confusion. To your left, a massive barrel of cane sugar cones, imported at great expense. To your right, a large jar where a dozen leeches writhe slowly in murky water. Your master sells tobacco, rare spices, and fine soap alongside his tinctures and pills. He is a merchant of the exotic as much as a purveyor of health. The sugar, you've learned, is a key part of the business. It's not just to make the often bitter medicines palatable. In a world where sweetness is a luxury, medicine loaded with sugar is a status symbol. It tells everyone that you can afford not just the cure, but the very best version of it. A simple cough syrup for a commoner might be bulked out with honey. For a nobleman, it would be a thick, crystalline syrup of refined sugar, a testament to his wealth. You hear a floorboard creak on the floor above. The master is awake. His heavy, shuffling footsteps signal the true start of the day. Soon he will be down, and your real work will begin. For now, you just stand in the center of this quiet, fragrant world, breathing it all in. The air is still cold, but it's full of promise. The promise of knowledge, of secrets, of the strange and gentle power hidden in the leaves, roots, and flowers that surround you. His footsteps are heavy on the stairs, a slow, deliberate descent that announces his presence long before you see him. The master apothecary emerges from the stairwell, a man as textured and layered as the shop itself. He is older, dressed in a simple, dark woolen doublet, his face a roadmap of deep lines. He doesn't offer a morning greeting or a word of encouragement. Words are expensive, it seems. Action is cheap. He simply nods once, a gesture that is both acknowledgement and command, and points a long, bony finger towards a thick, solid-looking block of wood in the corner. Atop it sits a large, grayish-white marble mortar, its bowl worn smooth from centuries of use. This, the gesture implies, is your first lesson. He moves with a surprising grace for his age, retrieving a small wooden scoop from a drawer. He fills it with tiny, brownish seeds and deposits them with a dry rattle into the bottom of the mortar. Aniseed. The warm, nourish scent immediately intensifies, a preview of the work to come. He hands you the pestle. It's a heavy, club-like object, also marble, and its weight is surprising. It feels substantial, ancient, a tool with purpose. He doesn't speak, but he demonstrates. He places the pestle in the mortar, and with a slow, hypnotic rhythm, begins to grind. It's a circular motion, a gentle scraping of stone against stone, punctuated by a firm, deliberate press. After a few rotations, he lifts the pestle, inspects the partially crushed seeds, and then looks at you, raising an eyebrow. The message is clear: your turn. He shuffles away to another part of the shop, leaving you alone with your first real task. You grip the pestle, trying to mimic his fluid motion. Your first attempt is a clumsy failure. You press too hard, with a jarring crack that sends a few seeds skittering out of the bowl and onto the floor. Annoyed, you try again, this time trying to go faster, a furious grinding that achieves little more than making a dreadful screeching sound and tiring your wrist. It turns out that pulverizing something into dust is a far more delicate art than you imagine. It's not about brute force, a lesson that seems to apply to much of the world outside of this shop as well. You take a breath, remembering the master's rhythm. Slow circle, firm press. Circle, press. Gradually, you begin to find the cadence. The sharp cracking of whole seeds gives way to a rough, abrasive rasping. As the seeds break down further, the sound softens into a gentle, whispery shush, the sound of tiny particles being smoothed into an even finer powder. The work is meditative. Circle, press, scrape the sides, tap the pestle to knock the clinging dust back into the center. Debates among medical historians continue as to whether the sound was purely practical, a sign of progress, or if the rhythmic, almost hypnotic noise of the grinding was considered part of the therapeutic atmosphere of the shop itself, a sonic promise of a coming cure. To you, and that's just the sound of your arms starting to ache in places you didn't know it could. The air around you becomes thick with the scent of anise. It's a clean, sweet smell, and you find yourself breathing it in deeply. This is the core of the apothecary's art, you realize. Not just mixing things, but transforming them. You are not merely crushing a seed. You are releasing its essence, its virtue, as the master would call it. Some practitioners hold an almost spiritual belief about this process. They believe you must kill the plant to release its spirit, its healing power. The physical body of the herb, the root or seed, is destroyed so that its soul can be properly harnessed. Looking at the fine, homogeneous powder now forming in the bowl, a ghost of the seeds it once was, this idea doesn't seem so far-fetched. Your master returns, silent as ever. He doesn't look at your face, only at your work. He reaches into the mortar with the thumb and forefinger, rubbing the powder between them. He holds it up to the weak morning light, checking for any uncrushed fragments. He gives a short, sharp grunt, which you decide to interpret as high praise. He then clears the aniseed powder into a small ceramic pot and replaces it with your next challenge, a handful of gnarled, woody chunks of licorice root. He doesn't hand you the pestle. Instead, he flips it over in his hand, offering you the flatter, broader end. The lesson is immediate. Some things need to be ground. Others need to be persuaded with more force. You begin to pound. The sound is completely different. A series of deep, resonant thumps echo through the shop, a stark contrast to the gentle whisper of the grinding. Thump, thump, thump. It's like listening to a very small, very determined giant trying to knock down a very tiny door. The hard root splinters, breaking down into tough, pale yellow fibers. It's even more work for your already complaining shoulder, but you understand the necessity. A different substance requires a different approach. Your master quietly explains that the marble mortar is for dry goods. For acidic syrups or preparations containing mercury, you would use a glass or ceramic mortar to prevent the stone from reacting and tainting the medicine. For the toughest resins and minerals, the shop has a heavy, imposing brass mortar, a tool that looks like it could survive a cannonball. For the better part of an hour, this is your world. The rhythm of the pestle, the changing textures of herbs and roots, the bloom of scent released with each new ingredient. You grind soft fennel seeds, you pound tough ginger root, you gently crush dried lavender flowers, careful not to bruise them into a paste. A fine, multicolored dust begins to coat your hands and the front of your dark apron, making you look like some sort of spectral baker. The sun has finally risen properly now, and a rectangle of brighter light falls across the floorboards. Just as you are scraping the last of the licorice fiber into a designated jar, the little bell above the door jingles, announcing the day's first customer. Your lesson in the foundations of the craft is over. It's time to see what all this dust is actually for. The jingle of the bell is startlingly loud in the quiet shop. The customer is a woman, her head covered by a simple linen coif, her hands clutching a small coin. She speaks in a low, hurried voice, asking for a penny's worth of dried chamomile. She's been unable to sleep, she explains, her worries sitting heavy on her chest. The master doesn't ask what her worries are. That's the business of priests and gossips. His business is the body. He moves to one of the many drawers, the one you filled not an hour ago with the fluffy, fragrant, daisy-like flowers. He uses a small wooden scoop, measures out a portion onto a piece of brown paper, folds it neatly with practiced, precise movements, and slides it across the counter. The coin is exchanged for the packet, and with a whispered thanks, the woman is gone. The bell jingles again, and silence returns. The entire transaction took less than a minute, a simple, elegant dance of need and remedy. Now, the quiet of the mid-morning settles in. This is the time between the early rush of workers seeking a preventative tonic and the afternoon visits from the households of the wealthy. The master shuffles over to the lectern that holds the shop's great leather-bound journal. He unties the leather strap, and the book falls open with a soft sigh of old paper. He beckons you over. He points to a page, then to a smaller, newer, and conspicuously empty book sitting on the counter next to it. He wants you to copy. This is the next stage of your education. Grinding and pounding is the work of the hands. This is the work of the mind. He gives you a freshly sharpened quill and a small pot of ink, and then retreats to the back of the shop to mix something that smells faintly of sulfur, leaving you to your task. You lean over the great book. The smell alone is intoxicating, a mix of dry paper, aging leather, and the ghost of every herb that has ever been ground nearby. The pages are thick, somewhere between paper and parchment, and they are covered in your master's handwriting. To call it handwriting is perhaps too generous. It's a frantic, spidery script, a dense thicket of ink where letters crash into each other, loops are left unfinished, and the whole thing slopes across the page as if it were trying to escape. It looks less like writing and more like a detailed map of a spider's nervous breakdown. Your first thought is that this is impossible. Your second is that you have no choice but to try. As your eyes slowly adjust, you begin to see the patterns. It's not one language, but three. There are long, formal-sounding phrases in Latin, the universal language of scholarship and medicine. You see terms like dosis, recipe, and spiritus vini, but mixed in, without any warning, are words in the common, everyday dialect, usually for simple actions like boil, or stir, or let sit for a day. And then there's the third language, the master's own personal shorthand. You start to notice little symbols drawn in the margins, a secret code that gives context to the cryptic text. Next to a recipe for a sleep draught made with poppy syrup, there's a tiny, perfectly drawn crescent moon. Next to an entry for a powerful purgative using antimony, there is a small, stark cross, a warning. It's a system of his own invention, designed to be understood only by him, and now, by you. You realize this book is his real treasure. While the city might have its official pharmacopoeia, a published book of standardized recipes that every apothecary is supposed to follow, this personal journal is where the real art lives. The official book has the recipe for, say, aneric fever reducer, but your master's journal has notes on how to adjust it based on the patient's age, or what to add if the fever is accompanied by a cough, or a far cheaper version for a patient with a thin purse. Historians debate the extent to which these personal formularies represented genuine medical innovation or were simply collections of folk magic, unproven theories, and recipes discreetly borrowed from competing apothecaries. Looking at the strange mix of Latin, local slang, and cryptic symbols, it feels like all of the above. You decide to start with a simple entry, one titled, "For Wind of the Stomach." It seems like a safe bet. You dip your quill. The first ingredient is straightforward enough. Sem. Anethi. Seeds of dill. You just ground some this morning. Then comes the instruction. Fiat pulvis. Let a powder be made. Easy enough. The next line reads, add 1 part funiculi, which you guess is fennel, and a half part zingiber, which you know is ginger. Miss Benna. Mix well. So far, so good. Then comes the dosage instruction, and it throws you completely. A spoonful, or what is sufficient, in warm wine when the moon is waxing. The vagueness is maddening. What is sufficient could mean anything from a tiny pinch to a heaping spoonful. It's a reminder that this is not a science of cold, hard numbers. It's an art of judgment, intuition, and apparently, astrology. You make a mental note to ask about the moon later. You spend the next hour hunched over the book, painstakingly copying the script into your own, cleaner apprentice's journal. Your neck begins to ache from the strain. Quill, dip, scratch, blot. You feel less like an apprentice and more like a codebreaker. As you finish a page, you turn to the next one in the master's book, and an entry catches your eye. It is for a cure for melancholia. The list of ingredients is long and strange, but it's the notes that fascinate you. The master has written about the patient suffering from an excess of black bile, and how the cure must warm the blood and lighten the spirit to restore the balance of the 4 humors. It's a word you've heard before, humors, but have never understood. This, you sense, is the key to everything. The grand, unifying theory of the entire practice. You carefully mark the page in your own book, determined to understand it. For now, you just keep copying, feeling like you've been tasked with translating a user's manual for the human body in a language that is almost, but not quite, entirely forgotten. You're still staring at the words in the master's journal, excess of black bile, when the bell above the door jingles. It's as if the thought itself summoned a patient. The man who enters is clearly a person of some standing. His coat is made of fine, dark wool, not rough homespun, and the buckles on his shoes are polished silver. But his wealth is a cloak wrapped around a figure of profound weariness. His shoulders slump forward, his gaze is fixed on the floorboards, and he moves with a slow, heavy drag, as if his boots are filled with lead. He is the physical embodiment of the word you were just reading, melancholy. He approaches the counter and speaks to your master, his voice low and devoid of energy. He complains of a persistent sadness, a gray veil that has fallen over the world, making everything seem tasteless and without joy. He has no appetite, he says, and sleep offers no escape, bringing only troubled dreams. He isn't sick in the way a man with a fever or a broken bone is sick. His ailment is of the spirit, a deep, internal shadow. He uses the word himself, a quiet, desperate whisper, "I am consumed by melancholy." The master listens, his head tilted slightly, his eyes never leaving the merchant's face. This is not a simple case of selling a packet of herbs. This is a consultation. When the merchant falls silent, the master gives a slow, thoughtful nod. He then turns, surprisingly, to you. He begins to speak, his voice soft but clear, and you realize he is explaining the situation for your benefit as much as the patient's. He is opening the door to the grand theory that governs his entire practice. He is telling you about the four humors. The body, he says, gesturing vaguely at the merchant, is governed by four fundamental liquids. Four humors. They are blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. He holds up four fingers. A healthy man is a man in balance. All four humors are present, working in harmony. He goes on to explain that each humor corresponds to a temperament. Blood, which is hot and moist like the air, makes a person sanguine, cheerful, optimistic, sociable. Phlegm, cold and moist like water, makes one phlegmatic, calm, peaceful, and thoughtful. Yellow bile, hot and dry like fire, makes a man choleric, ambitious, energetic, and prone to anger. You can't help but make a modern-day connection. It's like an ancient, far more poetic personality test. But the fourth humor, the master continues, his voice dropping slightly, is black bile. It is cold and dry like the earth. In balance, it gives a man artistic depth, sensitivity, and a thoughtful nature. But when there is an excess, it brings on melancholy. He looks pointedly at the merchant, who nods in grim understanding. The diagnosis has been given. The man's internal climate has become too cold and too dry. The vibrant, warm liquids of life are being overwhelmed by a cold, dark sludge. The solution, therefore, is logical. To fight an enemy that is cold and dry, you must introduce forces that are hot and moist. The master explains this to the merchant. The cure will not just be a single potion, but a change in his entire diet. He must avoid cold foods. No more cucumbers, no lettuce, no fish from the cold river, the master instructs. Instead, he must embrace hot foods, red meat roasted with pepper, bread warm from the oven, and most importantly, strong, sweet wine. The cure is to warm him up from the inside out. As you listen, you wonder about it all. Scholars of medicine and philosophy still debate how literally practitioners like your master believed in this. Was the body truly thought to be a vessel sloshing with these four distinct liquids? Or was black bile more of a powerful metaphor for the inexplicable sadness that can grip a person's soul? You briefly imagine the human torso as a kind of 17th century lava lamp, full of four different colored globs slowly rising and falling. The image is so absurd you have to stifle a smile. Now, the practical work begins. The master turns and begins to assemble the ingredients for the remedy you saw in the journal, the one for melancholia. He calls out the names, and you scurry to fetch the correct jars and packets. He asks for borage flowers, whose bright blue color and fuzzy stems were known to gladden the heart. He needs cinnamon bark, for its unmistakable fire. He requests a pinch of saffron, the most expensive spice in the world, whose golden threads were believed to capture the essence of the sun itself. It's a prescription of warmth and light. He carefully measures the ingredients, mixing them into a bottle of deep red, sweet wine, a hot and moist liquid, to serve as the carrier for all the other warming herbs. The merchant pays the considerable fee without a word, his eyes fixed on the bottle, as if it contains the last spark of hope in the world. He clutches it to his chest and departs, leaving the scent of damp wool and money hanging in the air. The shop is quiet once more. The master looks at you, his expression unreadable. "Read the chapter on the humors," he says, pointing to the journal. "All of it. Do not mix another powder until you understand the system." You return to the lectern, your task clear. Before you is not just a book of recipes, but a complete map of the human condition. You see charts linking the 4 humors to the 4 seasons, the 4 stages of life, and even the planets. It's an intricate, dizzying system, more complex than any family tree you've ever seen, and you suspect it makes about as much sense. But this is the science of your age. And as you lean over the page, tracing the lines that connect sad, earthy black bile to the season of autumn, you know that to understand this is to understand the very world you now inhabit. Your head is swimming. You've been hunched over the master's journal for what feels like an eternity, trying to navigate the choppy seas of humoral theory. Black bile, phlegm, hot, cold, moist, dry. It's a complex, invisible architecture that supposedly holds up the entire human body, but it feels abstract, like trying to build a house out of fog. The master, noticing your furrowed brow and the faint sigh of intellectual surrender, shuffles over. He places a dry, papery hand on the open page, gently closing the book. "Theory is a ghost," he says, his voice a low rumble. "It has no body. You cannot learn medicine only from words. You must learn to see." He beckons you to follow him, not to the counter where medicines are compounded, but to a simple barrel in the corner of the shop. He reaches in and pulls out a walnut. He places it in the palm of your hand. It's hard, ridged, and unremarkable. Then, using a small, specialized cracker, he neatly splits it in half. He holds one of the halves up to the light. "Look," he commands. And you do. You see the 2 wrinkled, folded hemispheres of the nut meat, separated by a thin, central partition. You see the way the hard, outer shell encloses it completely. The resemblance is sudden, striking, and absolutely undeniable. It looks exactly like a miniature human brain, nestled inside a tiny skull. God, in his infinite wisdom and mercy, the master begins, his voice taking on the cadence of a sermon, did not wish for man to suffer in ignorance of the cures he placed upon the earth. So he marked them. He left a signature on every root, leaf, and flower, a divine clue so that any man with eyes to see might know its purpose. He taps the walnut. The signature of the walnut is the brain. Therefore, it is used to treat ailments of the head, to fortify the mind, and to soothe the troubled spirit. This, you realize, is a revelation. It's a completely different system of knowledge, layered right on top of the humors. It's called the doctrine of signatures. It's the belief that nature is a divinely written picture book of remedies. You don't need to memorize 1,000 different plants. You just need to learn how to look at them properly. It's like the world's first and most organic user interface, with little icons showing you what each application does. A plant that looks like a liver is for the liver. Simple, elegant, and, you suspect, probably wrong a good portion of the time. Your master, seeing the understanding dawn on your face, now takes you on a slow tour of the shop, transforming it from a storeroom into a museum of divine hints. He pulls down a jar of small dried flowers. "Eye bright," he says. He holds one up, and you have to squint to see it. A delicate white flower with a yellow spot in the center and fine purple stripes radiating outwards. It looks, to your astonishment, like a tiny, bloodshot eye. It is used, of course, for soothing eye infections and improving vision. He moves on, pulling out a dried, mottled leaf from another jar. It's covered in pale, oval spots. "Lungwort," he says. The spots give the leaf the appearance of a diseased lung. You can already guess its purpose, for coughs, shortness of breath, and other troubles of the chest. The tour continues. He points to a bunch of hanging herbs with 3 lobed leaves that look uncannily like a liver. "Liverwort," he says with a shrug, as if it's the most obvious thing in the world. He shows you the stalk of a plant called boneset, where the stem appears to grow directly through a pair of fused leaves, looking for all the world like it has healed or set a break in the leaf. Its purpose? to help mend broken bones, naturally. Medical historians and theologians still debate whether the doctrine of signatures was a genuine, deeply felt theological belief in God's providence, or simply a brilliant and convenient mnemonic device to help apothecaries and folk healers remember which plant did what. A sort of cosmic game of Pictionary between God and man. The master then explains how this visual system works in harmony with the humors. A signature tells you what organ a plant treats, but its properties, its taste, its feel, its inherent nature tell you how it treats it. He picks up a kidney bean. Its signature is for the kidneys, clearly, he says, but if you chew it, you will find it has a cold and moist nature. Therefore, we would not use it for a cold kidney ailment, like one caused by an excess of phlegm. We would use it for a hot kidney ailment, one caused by an excess of choler or yellow bile. The two systems interlock, creating a beautifully complex, self-referential logic. The lesson is over. The shop, which an hour ago seemed like a chaotic collection of dried, dead things, now feels alive with meaning. It's a library of symbols. Every jar, every hanging bundle contains not just a plant, but a clue, a secret whispered from the earth. You look from the jar of brain-shaped walnuts to the spotted lungwort leaves, and then you look down at your own hands. You find yourself wondering, with a strange and sudden curiosity, what signature your own body carries. What clues did the Creator leave in the shape of your eyes or the lines on your palm? You glance back at the shelves, at the rows of bottled and boxed remedies, and you make a quiet, sensible, and deeply personal resolution to stay away from any plant that happens to look, even vaguely, like a tiny tombstone. Your mind is a gallery of strange images. Brain-shaped walnuts, lung-spotted leaves, eye-like flowers. The world of symbols is fascinating, but also exhausting. Seeing your thoughtful days, the master decides it's time to move from the philosophy of seeing to the art of doing. He leads you toward the back of the shop, to a workspace near a small, brick-lined hearth. Here sits a piece of equipment so strange and beautiful, it seems to belong to another world. It is an alembic, a delicate apparatus of hand-blown glass that glints in the dim light. It looks like a bizarre, long-necked glass bird, or perhaps a piece of laboratory equipment designed by a dreamer. You later learn the names of its parts. The round, bulbous base is the cucurbit, and the hooded cap with the long, downward-sloping beak is the alembic proper. It seems impossibly fragile, a tool for a magician, not a shopkeeper. Today's task, the master explains, is to make rosewater. He points to a large wicker basket filled with fresh, pink rose petals. The scent is heavenly, a sweet, floral cloud that feels like a memory of a summer garden. Your first job is to carefully place a few large handfuls of the petals into the cucurbit, the round base. Then, you are to cover them with clean, clear water from a jug. You do as you're told, the soft, cool petals feeling like silk against your fingers. You then carefully place the alembic cap on top, ensuring a snug fit, and position a clean glass flask beneath the tip of its long, beak-like spout. The whole setup now looks even more like a mother bird about to feed its young. Next comes the most delicate part of the process, the fire. Using small tongs, you move a few glowing charcoals from the hearth to a small brazier situated directly beneath the alembic's belly. The master warns you with a stern look that the heat must be gentle, a mere whisper. You are not boiling the roses. You are coaxing them. You are persuading them to release their spirit. He traces the path of this transformation with the long finger. The slow, gentle heat will turn the water into steam, and that steam will carry the most volatile and fragrant part of the rose, its very essence, upwards. When this fragrant vapor hits the cooler glass of the cap, it will transform back into a liquid, a kind of potent, floral sweat. This condensed spirit will then trickle down the beak and fall, drop by drop, into the waiting flask. Your job is to be the tender of this gentle process. You sit on a low stool, your eyes fixed on the alembic, your only task to ensure the fire never gets too hot or too cold. It's quiet, meditative work. The only sounds are the soft, occasional crackle of the charcoal and, after a little while, a faint, steady hiss from within the glass as the water begins to simmer. You watch as the inside of the cap begins to mist over, a fog of pure rose essence. Then, You see it. A single, perfect, crystal clear drop forms at the tip of the spout. It hangs there for a moment, shimmering, before falling with a nearly silent splash into the receiving flask. Then another, and another. You are capturing a ghost. As you watch the slow, steady drip, the master tells you of the many uses for this precious liquid you are creating. It is not merely a perfume for wealthy ladies to dab behind their ears. This rosewater will be used as a gentle anti-inflammatory, a few drops to soothe red, tired eyes. It will be given as a mild cordial to calm a patient suffering from a nervous disposition. It will be used as a luxurious flavoring in the sugar candies and jellies the master sometimes prepares for his richest clients. It is a medicine, a cosmetic, and a confection all in one. Its versatility makes it one of the most consistently profitable products in the entire shop. The process feels magical, and you can't help but feel like an alchemist. Alchemical historians still debate the true purpose of these exercises in the minds of men like your master. Was this simply a practical chemical process to create a useful product? Or was it a deeper, more spiritual exercise to extract the quintessence, the pure, untainted soul of the rose, leaving its mundane, earthly body behind in the simmering water? Watching the clear, potent spirit drip into the flask, it's easy to believe it is the latter. You're not just making fancy water. You're a bartender for angels, serving up the distilled soul of a flower. An hour passes, marked only by the slow accumulation of liquid in the flask. You add more charcoal, you add more water and petals to the cucurbit. You watch the drops fall. The air in the back room is now thick with the purest, most intense rose scent imaginable. It's a perfume so potent it almost doesn't smell like flowers anymore, but like the idea of them. Finally, the master declares the work is done. You carefully remove the brazier, and the hissing subsides. The receiving flask is nearly full. He uncaps the alembic and allows you to look inside. The once vibrant pink petals are now a pale, limp, boiled mass, their color and scent completely gone. Their spirit is now in the flask. You have learned another fundamental secret of the trade: how to carefully separate a thing's soul from its body, collecting it one precious, fragrant drop at a time. You are carefully labeling the last bottle of rosewater. It scents a clean, floral perfume in the still air of the back room. The quiet is pleasant, a soft blanket after the focused intensity of the distillation. But the peace is broken by the jingle of the shop bell, followed immediately by a sound that is the complete opposite of a rose's whisper: a deep, hacking, rattling cough. It's a wet, productive sound, the kind of cough that seems to shake a man's entire skeleton. You emerge into the main shop to see a stonemason, his clothes and hands gray with dust, leaning on the counter for support after another coughing fit. He explains his ailment between gasps. A cough that started in his chest 3 days ago has now taken root, leaving him weak and unable to work. The master listens intently, his gaze analytical. He nods slowly, and looking at the man but speaking to you, he begins another lesson. Remember the woman who purchased chamomile for her sleeplessness? He asks. You nod. That was a simple remedy. One herb, for one purpose. The chamomile possesses a gentle, calming virtue, and for a simple case of sleeplessness, that is enough. He gestures towards the still wheezing stonemason. But this is not a simple matter. The cough is deep. The humor of the phlegm, which is by its nature cold and moist, has grown excessive in his lungs. To fight it, we need more than one soldier. We need an army. We must create a compound medicine. He explains the philosophy behind it. A compound is a team of ingredients, each chosen for a specific role, working in harmony. One herb might be the general, leading the main assault. Another might be a scout, clearing the way. And a third might be a diplomat, soothing the local population. It's a strategic combination, where the whole becomes more powerful than the sum of its parts. The master directs you to his journal, which you now know how to navigate with some confidence. He points to a recipe titled Syrupus pectoralis, a pectoral syrup, for ailments of the chest. This will be your first compound. The first ingredient he calls for is harhound. You fetch a bundle of the dried, gray-green herb. The master explains that this is the general of your army. Harhound has a powerful virtue for expelling phlegm, but it is also famous for something else. an almost shockingly intense bitterness. It's a taste that promises potent medicine precisely because it is so unpleasant. Next, he asks for licorice root, the same fibrous wood you spent so much time pounding into shreds earlier. This, the master explains, is your diplomat. While it also has a reputation for soothing coughs, its primary role here is strategic. Its intense, natural sweetness will be a diplomat to the tongue, masking the harhound's bitter assault and making the medicine tolerable. The final soldier is aniseed, your scout. You fetch the powder you ground yourself. Its warming, spicy nature will counteract the coldness of the phlegm, and its pleasant, familiar flavor will make the whole concoction seem more like a treat and less like a punishment. As you measure the ingredients, a large portion of harhound, a smaller amount of licorice, a mere pinch of aniseed, you can't help but ponder the nature of these complex recipes. Historians of pharmacy often debate the motive behind them. Was it a genuine belief that combining multiple ingredients created a powerful synergy that no single herb could match? Or was it simply good business? After all, a secret, multi-ingredient formula is much harder for a competitor to copy, and certainly justifies a higher price than selling a simple bag of bitter harhound. It's the 17th century version of patenting a drug by adding a mysterious proprietary blend to the label. The process of compounding is different from distillation. You aren't separating a spirit, you are forcing a marriage. First, you create a decoction, simmering the harhound and licorice root in a pot of water over the hearth. The water slowly turns a dark, murky brown, and the air fills with a strange aroma, bitterly herbal and earthy. After a time, you strain the liquid through a piece of cheesecloth, squeezing out every last drop of the potent, dark tea, and discarding the now useless, boiled herbs. This dark liquid goes back on the gentle heat, and now you add the base, honey. You add scoop after scoop of the thick, golden syrup, stirring until it dissolves completely. The liquid thickens, becoming a true, viscous syrup. Finally, you stir in the powdered aniseed. The aroma changes again, becoming a bizarre, but not entirely unpleasant combination of bitter, sweet, and spicy. It smells like a fairy tale witch's failed attempt at making candy. The syrup is finished. It's a dark, foreboding, sticky-looking liquid. The master ladles a small amount onto a spoon, that cool, and tastes it. He rolls it around in his mouth, his expression unreadable. Then he gives his signature, singular grunt of approval. He pours the warm syrup into a bottle, corks it, and hands it to the stonemason with instructions to take a spoonful with the rising and setting of the sun. The man pays, his coin seeming small in comparison to the potent, composed medicine he receives. After he leaves, you are left to clean the sticky pot and spoons. You have not just ground or distilled today, you have composed. You have assembled an army, balanced bitterness with sweetness, and created a single, unified weapon to wage war on. A cough. The sweet, sticky residue of the cough syrup is finally cleaned from the pots and spoons, and a quiet lull settles over the shop. The afternoon sun slants through the front window, illuminating the ever-present dust in thick, golden shafts. The day feels like it is winding down, but the bell jingles again, not with a confident ring, but with a hesitant, almost apologetic tinkle. A man stands at the threshold, his clothes patched and faded by the sun. He holds a sweat-stained hat in his hands, twisting the brim anxiously. He does not approach the counter like a customer, but stands just inside the door like a petitioner. He is a farmer, he explains, from a small plot of land a few miles beyond the city walls. He speaks in a low, worried voice, his eyes pleading. His young son is sick with the ague. The word hangs in the air, a familiar and feared diagnosis. He describes the boy's condition, one moment burning with a fever that makes the sweat bead on his brow, the next racked with chills so violent his teeth chatter, a relentless cycle that has left him weak as a newborn kitten. The farmer has no coins to offer. He promises a share of his vegetable harvest when the time comes, a few sacks of potatoes or a basket of beans. He is not here to buy a cure. He is here to beg for one. The master, to his credit, doesn't hesitate. He gives the farmer a slow nod of acknowledgement and turns to you for another lesson. This, his expression says, is a different kind of medicine. The melancholy merchant, he begins quietly, acquired a medicine of theory. His cold, dry humor needed to be balanced with hot, moist spices from the Orient. His was a cure that had to be purchased. But the ague is a fire in the blood, and for a fire, God has provided the water nearby. We do not need the expensive drawers for this. You begin to understand that this shop operates on two distinct tiers of healthcare, a reality that social historians of medicine continue to explore. The wealthy receive bespoke, theory-driven treatments based on the ancient wisdom of the Greeks, cures filled with costly, imported ingredients that speak as much to their status as to their health. The poor, on the other hand, receive simpler, more practical remedies, the kind of medicine rooted in generations of local folk tradition. It's a system born of necessity, but you have a sneaking suspicion that these common cures are, in their own way, just as powerful. The master directs you away from the polished drawers of spices and toward the rough-hewn wooden bins at the back of the shop. These contain the less glamorous, but no less vital, stock. Forget the saffron, he says. We need the willow. He has you gather up a large handful of dried, brittle strips of willow bark. He explains that it is a febrifuge, one of the most reliable he knows for taming the fire of a fever. He has no idea that the bark is rich in a substance called salicin, the natural blueprint for modern aspirin. His knowledge isn't from a book of chemical theory. It's from the simple, undeniable observation that it works. This is the original generic medicine, no fancy branding required. Next, he points you to a basket of yarrow, a common weed with feathery leaves and a flat top of tiny white flowers. You've seen it growing in every fallow field. Its virtue, he explains, is to open the pores and encourage sweating, a process believed to help break a fever by letting the evil heat escape the body. To this, you add a handful of meadowsweet, another common plant from the damp lands by the river, known for easing the aches and pains that always accompany the ague. The preparation of this remedy is as rustic as its ingredients. There is no gentle distillation, no careful creation of a sweet syrup. You are simply instructed to crush the bark and dried herbs together in a large stone mortar. You don't need a fine powder, just a rough, splintery mixture. It looks like nothing more than collected debris from a forest floor. The master pours the mixture into a simple cloth bag and hands it to the farmer. He instructs the man to boil it in a pot of water until the water turns dark and bitter. His son is to drink this tea as often as he can stomach it. There is no pretense of this being pleasant. The medicine for the wealthy merchant was delivered in a sweet, spiced wine. This medicine will taste like boiled tree bark, because that is precisely what it is. The farmer takes the bag with both hands, his face a mask of profound relief and gratitude. His whispered thanks holds more weight than the handful of silver coins the merchant paid. He departs, clutching his simple bag of hope. You are left to sweep the stray bits of bark and leaf from the floorboards. In the span of a single afternoon, you have seen two faces of healing. One was a complex art for the rich, a battle of invisible humors fought with exotic spices. The other was a simple craft for the poor, battle against fire fought with common weeds. And you can shake the feeling that the humble willow tree by the river holds a more direct and honest magic than the most expensive saffron from across the sea. The cure wasn't in some faraway land. It was growing right outside the city walls. You're sweeping the floor, your mind still lingering on the quiet dignity of the farmer and the simple power of the willow bark. You feel a sense of grounding, a connection to the good, clean earth, and the things that grow from it. The master, however, seems to sense that you are getting too comfortable. He decides it is time to complicate your relationship with the natural world. Not all remedies grow in the soil, he says, his voice pulling you from your thoughts. Some of them crawl upon it, or within it. He gestures for you to follow him to a dark, damp corner of the back room, a place you have so far subconsciously avoided. Here, on the stone floor, sit two large, covered earthenware pots. The air around them is heavy with the smell of damp earth and something else, something vaguely primeval. The master crouches down and lifts the cloth from the first pot. You peer inside, and your stomach does a slow, queasy flip. It is filled with rich, black soil, and writhing through it are dozens upon dozens of thick, pinkish-gray earthworms. Before you can fully process this, he uncovers the second pot. This one contains a colony of common garden snails, their shells glistening, their eye stalks waving slowly as they explore the confines of their ceramic world. Today, the master announces, without a hint of irony, we make a salve for sore joints and sprains. You suddenly miss the clean, predictable, and distinctly non-wriggling nature of plants. Your first task, he explains, involves the worms. They must be prepared. This involves rinsing them of their soil and then gently simmering them in a pot of olive oil. The goal is not to cook them in a culinary sense, but to slowly infuse the oil with their virtue. Your job is to sit by the hearth, stirring the pot with the long wooden spoon, as the worms are gently heated in the warm oil. The smell is unlike anything else, a deep, loamy, almost fungal scent, mixed with the grassy aroma of the oil. You try not to look too closely at what you're stirring, focusing instead on the texture, the gentle resistance as the spoon moves through the increasingly murky liquid. This, you think, is a true test of your apprenticeship. As you stir your unsettling stew, you try to rationalize it. This isn't just some bizarre folk magic your master invented. The use of ingredients from the animal kingdom known as animalia was a well-respected, if less common, branch of the pharmacopoeia. Powders were made from woodlice, tinctures from ants, and fats from nearly any creature you could imagine. This is simply a part of the trade you hadn't confronted yet. Medical anthropologists debate the true nature of these remedies. Were they effective purely because of the power of suggestion, the idea that a cure so disgusting must surely be powerful, or did these humble creatures contain genuinely active compounds that were simply not understood? You can only hope it's the latter as you watch the oil slowly darken. While the worm oil continues its slow infusion, you are given your next task. You turn to the pot of snails. Thankfully, the master explains, the snails do not need to be harmed. You only need to irritate them into sharing their slime. He gives you a large, clean pewter plate. Your job is to place a few snails at a time onto the plate and gently, patiently, prod them with a small, clean twig. Annoyed by the prodding, the snails retreat into their shells, excreting a thick, glistening mucus as a defense. It is this slime, this snail mucilage, that you are after. You spend the next half-hour bullying snails, scraping up the sticky, silvery trails they leave behind into a small bowl. It's a slow, strange, and deeply undignified process for both you and the snails. Finally, the two main components are ready. The master helps you strain the worm-infused oil through a thick cloth, separating the now darkened liquid from the spent, limp bodies of the worms, which are quickly and unceremoniously discarded. You are left with a surprisingly thin, brownish oil that smells of a freshly dug grave. The final step is to combine everything. You gently heat the worm oil again, and into it, you stir the bowl of snail mucilage and a generous dollop of yellow beeswax. You stir and stir, the beeswax slowly melting, the slime incorporating, until the whole concoction transforms into a smooth, greenish-brown, rather foul-looking ointment. It looks like something you might scrape off the bottom of your boot after a long walk through a marsh. The master pours the still warm salve into small earthenware pots and sets them aside to cool and solidify. The smell lingers on your hands, earthy and greasy. You have crossed a new threshold today. You have graduated from the noble kingdom of plants to the squirming, slimy world of animal remedies. You look at your hands, which have ground fragrant spices and distilled pure rosewater, and now feel tainted by boiled worms and snail slime. You realize that the definition of medicine is far broader, for stranger, and occasionally, far more disgusting than you had ever imagined. And you make a solemn vow to wash your hands very, very thoroughly before dinner. You are scrubbing your hands for what feels like the 100th time, trying to banish the ghostly, earthy scent of the worm and snail salve. Just as you decide your skin is as clean as it's ever going to be, a sharp, authoritative rap comes at the front door. It's not the jingle of the bell, but a knock. You open it to find a man dressed in a fine livery of blue and silver, a servant from a wealthy household. He looks down his nose at the shop's rustic interior and announces that his master, the Baron von Geisler, is suffering a terrible paroxysm of the gout and requires the apothecary's presence immediately. The master's entire demeanor shifts. The quiet, shuffling teacher disappears, replaced by a brisk, focused professional. This is not a case that can be treated over the counter. This requires a house call. He instructs you to pack the house call bag. It's a sturdy leather case, and you don't fill it with pre-made remedies, but with the tools and raw ingredients for custom work. You pack a small heavy bronze mortar and pestle, several clean linen cloths, a block of yellow beeswax, and bags of specific powders, dried chamomile for soothing barley flour to act as a base, and a few other herbs you don't yet recognize. It's a portable version of your workbench, ready for deployment. The servant leads you out of your familiar neighborhood, away from the smells of sawdust, baking bread, and horse manure. You walk toward the wealthy quarter of the city, where the streets are wider, cleaner, and the houses stand apart from each other, built of imposing stone instead of humble timber and plaster. The air itself seems thinner, quieter. You feel grubby and out of place in your simple apprentice's apron, as if the scent of boiled worms is still clinging to you. Historians and economists still debate the complex social dance an apothecary had to perform, needing the hands of a craftsman, the mind of a scholar, and the polish of a courtier, constantly bridging the vast gap between the world of labor and the world of the elite. You are led through a wrought iron gate, across a neat courtyard, and into the baron's home. The inside is hushed and dim, the floors covered in thick carpets that swallow the sound of your footsteps. Polished wood gleams, and a large, solemn portrait of an ancestor glowers down at you from the wall. You are ushered upstairs and into the master bedchamber. The room is vast, dominated by a heavy, four-poster bed draped in velvet curtains. In the bed lies the baron, a large man whose face is flushed and beaded with sweat. His groans are the only loud sound in the room. One of his feet rests upon a silk pillow. The joint of his big toe is not just a little sore. It is a monstrous thing, swollen to twice its normal size, and a terrifying, angry shade of red. It shines under the candlelight, looking hot enough to cook an egg on. The master assesses the situation with a calm, practiced eye. A classic presentation of the gout, he murmurs to you. The disease of kings. He explains under his breath that the baron's rich diet, too much red meat, port, and rich sauces has caused an excess of hot, aggressive humors in his blood. These humors, having nowhere else to go, have settled in the extremity of the foot, causing this painful, fiery blockage. The goal is not just to soothe the pain, but to draw out the wicked heat and the ill humors trapped in the joint. The master sets up a small, clean workspace on a table. He asks one of the anxious servants to fetch boiled colewort leaves, a common cabbage, and some warm water. When they arrive, he instructs you to place the soft, wilted green leaves into the bronze mortar and begin to mash them into a pulp. To the mashed cabbage, you add a few spoonfuls of the barley flour, creating a thick, warm, greenish paste that looks like a strange, lumpy porridge. Finally, you mix in a generous pinch of the chamomile powder. The resulting poultice is not meant to be beautiful. It is a tool. You realize, with a flash of surreal clarity, preparing a hot vegetable compress for a nobleman's toe, a service for which he will be charged a handsome fee. It's a brilliant business model. The master takes the warm paste and spreads it thickly onto one of the clean linen cloths. Then, with a touch that is both surprisingly gentle and firm, he wraps the poultice around the baron's inflamed toe. The baron, who had flinched when the master's shadow had fallen on his foot, lets out a long, shuddering sigh of relief as the gentle, moist heat begins to penetrate his skin. The immediate, fiery agony begins to recede into a dull, manageable throb. The crisis is over. The master leaves instructions with the baroness' wife on how to mix and apply a fresh poultice every few hours, and provides a small vial of a bitter tincture to be taken internally to help cleanse the blood. His fee is paid, discreetly and generously. You pack the bag and are shown out into the falling dusk. Walking back to the shop, the contrast of your day is almost dizzying. This morning, you were in a dark corner of the shop, rendering the essence of worms. This afternoon, you were in a silk-draped bedchamber, easing the pain of a baron. The apothecary, you understand now, must be a man who can walk in all worlds, his hands equally comfortable with the slime of a snail and the silk of a lord. The morning after the visit to the baron's estate, you feel a new sense of professional pride. You helped treat a nobleman. You have seen how the other half lives, and how they hurt. As you're sweeping the floor, the shop bell jingles, and a lady's maid enters. She is discreet and speaks in a low voice, asking not for a wormwood tonic or a fever reducer, but for a pot of the master's finest Venetian ceruse, and a new vial of belladonna drops for her mistress. The master sells them to her without comment, the transaction as routine as selling a bag of chamomile. After the maid leaves, he turns to you, a new and serious look in his eye. You have seen how we mend the body, he says. Now, you must learn how we can break it. He leads you to a tall, narrow cabinet in the back of the shop, one you have noted before only because it is always locked. It is made of dark, heavy oak, and the lock is iron and complex. He produces a special key from a hidden pocket in his waistcoat and turns it. The lock gives a heavy, grating click, and he swings the door open. The shelves inside do not hold the familiar jars of dried herbs or seeds. They hold smaller, carefully labeled vials and stone pots containing potent minerals and concentrated tinctures. This is the poison cabinet. He takes down a heavy ceramic pot containing a stark white, dense powder. This is white lead, he says. The main ingredient in the ceruse our customer just purchased. He explains that when mixed with vinegar and water, it creates the fashionable, porcelain white complexion desired by every lady of quality. It covers blemishes, smallpox scars, and the natural ruddiness of a healthy face, replacing it with the smooth, aristocratic pallor. Then he tells you the other side of the story. It is also one of our slowest and most patient poisons. He explains that with continued use, the lead seeps into the skin. It causes the skin to blacken and scar, creating a vicious cycle where more and more of the powder is needed to hide the damage it creates. It makes the hair fall out, rots the teeth from the gums, and slowly poisons the user from the inside, leading to weakness, tremors, and eventually, death. It is the perfect product, you think, with a grim irony, a subscription to a sickness that only it can hide. You look at him, aghast, and ask if the ladies know of this danger. The master gives a slight shrug. Historians of beauty and toxicology debate this very point. Is the danger a well-known secret, a risk women are willing to take in the name of fashion? Or is the connection between a lady's failing health and her makeup pot genuinely not understood? Because the poison is so slow, its symptoms, the headaches, the stomach pains, the weakness, are easily blamed on a dozen other maladies. Next, he points to a vial of a dark, viscous liquid. Belladonna, he says, from the deadly nightshade plant. He explains that the name itself means beautiful lady, because when a tiny, diluted drop is placed in each eye, it causes the pupils to dilate, creating a wide-eyed, dark, and deeply alluring gaze. It is a trick to simulate a look of arousal and wonder. Then he holds the vial up to the light. A few drops of this same liquid in a man's wine, he says quietly, and he would be dead before he could call for help. The same substance that creates a fashionable look of surprise is a tool for a final, deadly surprise. It gives a whole new, literal meaning to the phrase, if looks could kill. He goes on to show you other substances from the cabinet. A dark, metallic mineral called stibnite, which is ground into a fine powder to make kohl, a dramatic eyeliner. It is a compound of antimony, another heavy metal that is toxic to the body. He explains that a small, carefully measured dose of antimony can be used as a powerful emetic, a medicine to induce violent vomiting to purge a poison. A slightly larger dose is a poison itself, and when painted carefully on the eyelids, it is the height of fashion. This is the heart of the lesson. The difference between a cosmetic, a medicine, and a poison is terrifyingly small. Often, it is nothing more than the dosage, the method of application, and the intent of the user. In this locked cabinet, the master holds the power to beautify, to heal, and to kill, and sometimes, all three potentials are contained within the very same jar. The responsibility of the apothecary, you realize, is immense. It is a sacred trust, a balancing act on the knife's edge between remedy and ruin. He locks the cabinet, and the sound of the key turning feels heavy and final. You look around the familiar, comfortable chaos of the shop, but you see it now with new eyes. You wonder what other secrets are hiding in plain sight on the shelves. Which of these peaceful-looking herbs has a dark cousin? Which mineral powder is more than it seems? The world of healing is not a simple battle between sickness and health. It is a far more complex and dangerous field of play, where beauty and death are neighbors, and the apothecary must be the careful, watchful gatekeeper between them. The lesson of the poison cabinet hangs in the air between you and the master, a heavy, unspoken truth about the darker side of your trade. The world feels a little less safe, a little more treacherous. As if on cue to answer this new anxiety, the shop bell rings. The man who enters is not a customer. He is a courier, a professional traveler, his face weathered by the sun and sea. He carries a small, unassuming wooden box, about the size of a man's fist, sealed shut with thick bands of dark red wax. This is clearly a special delivery. The master's usual calm demeanor is replaced by a quiet intensity. He exchanges a few hushed words with the courier, and a small but heavy bag of coins is passed from the master's hand to the courier's. It is a transaction of great significance. Once the courier has gone, the master places the box on the counter with a reverence you have not seen him show for anything else. He carefully breaks the wax seals with a small knife and lifts the lid. Inside, nestled in a bed of soft, raw wool, lies a small, dark object. It's ovoid, about the size of a pigeon's egg, with a smooth, almost polished, brownish-black surface. It looks like a strange, lumpy river stone. "Behold," the master says, his voice barely a whisper, "a bezoar." He explains that this is not a stone from the earth, but a calculus from the stomach of a wild bezoar goat in the mountains of Persia. For years, the goat's digestive system has worked on a mass of indigestible material, hair, tree sap, vegetable fibers, compressing it, layer by layer, into this hard, dense, stone-like object. It is a slow, natural miracle of alchemy, and its legendary virtue? It is believed to be a panacea, a universal antidote. A small scraping of the stone, dissolved in wine, is said to cure a man of poison. A whole stone, lowered into a suspect drink, will render it harmless. It is, you think, the world's most expensive and exotic emergency detox kit. The master tells you that an object this precious is not for the likes of commoners. Its buyers are kings, queens, dukes, and paranoid barons, the sort of people whose wealth and power make them likely targets for a poisoner's arts. To own a bezoar stone was the ultimate insurance policy in a world where your political rival might try to settle a dispute through the bottom of your wineglass. Historians and material culture specialists still debate the true nature of the bezoar trade. How was the authenticity of a stone from a goat's stomach halfway across the world truly proven? And how much of its astronomical value was based on its supposed medicinal power versus its role as a pure status symbol, a rare and mysterious gem to be displayed in a cabinet of curiosities? The master decides a small demonstration of its supposed power is in order. He pours 2 glasses of cheap wine. Into one, he drops a tiny pinch of a mineral powder that fizzes slightly, clouding the wine. "Imagine this is poisoned," he instructs. He then takes the bezoar stone. From a separate, smaller box, he removes a delicate silver chain with a small cage at the end, designed to hold the stone. He secures the bezoar and tells you how the great apothecary Hugh Morgan once performed a similar test for Queen Elizabeth I, to convince her of a bezoar's value by testing it on a condemned prisoner. He then gently lowers the stone into the poisoned glass. The fizzing seems to subside, though you suspect that would have happened anyway. The demonstration is not one of science, but of faith and theater. Its most immediate effect is neutralizing the money in a rich man's purse. When the demonstration is over, the master carefully rinses and dries the precious object. "This will not be sold whole," he explains, "not unless a prince comes knocking. More likely, its services will be rented out to a wealthy family for a tense wedding feast, or he will sell minuscule scrapings, mere dustings of the stone, for a price that could feed a family for a month." He takes the stone and locks it away, not on a shelf, not even in the main storeroom, but in the dark, oak cabinet, right alongside the poisons it is meant to defeat. The ultimate antidote, stored next to the ultimate threat. You're left to ponder the day's lessons. Yesterday, you learned that a slow, creeping death could hide in a beautiful woman's makeup pot. Today, you have learned that the ultimate cure for that death can be found in the belly of a distant goat. The world of medicine has suddenly expanded, revealing itself to be a marketplace of profound and expensive strangeness. Death and its antidote are not just concepts. They are rare and coveted commodities, traded for bags of gold, and locked away for only the powerful to afford. You wonder briefly if a common sheep ever produces a similar, less impressive stone, a sort of bezoar light, for the modestly paranoid middle class. The thought almost makes you smile. The thrill of the bezoar stone has faded, leaving behind the normal, quiet rhythm of the shop. You are at the workbench, about to measure out a powder for a simple digestive tonic, when the master's hand gently closes over yours, stopping you. You look up, confused. You have the right ingredients, pulled from the correct jars, and you are using the clean bronze mortar as instructed. The ingredients are correct, the master says, as if reading your thoughts. But tell me, is it the right time? The question hangs in the air, revealing another layer of complexity you hadn't even considered. He leads you to a bookshelf you rarely consult, past the herbals and medical texts, to a thick, well-worn almanac. He lays it open on the counter. The pages are a dizzying forest of symbols, charts, and tables tracking the movements of the sun, the moon, and the planets through the houses of the zodiac. It's a celestial timetable, a cosmic calendar that, he explains, is as important a tool as the mortar and pestle. A plant's virtue is not a constant thing, he says, tracing a line of planetary symbols with his finger. It waxes and wanes with the heavens. To harvest an herb, prepare a medicine, or treat a patient at the wrong time is to swim against the current of the cosmos. At best, your cure will be weak. At worst, it could do harm. This, he explains, is the science of medical astrology. It is the art of timing. He begins to break down the system. The 7 classical planets: the Sun, the Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn each hold dominion over different parts of the human body, and they are each sympathetic to certain plants. The art of healing is to align these sympathies correctly. The sun, he says, rules the heart and the vital spirit. Its herbs are those that are golden or sun-shaped, like marigold and chamomile. He points to a bundle of prickly, dried nettles. Mars, the planet of fire and war, rules the head and the blood. Its herbs are often thorny, sharp-tasting, or red, like the nettle. The moon, he continues, rules the stomach, the brain, and all the body's fluids. Its herbs are watery and cooling, like the willow bark you used for the farmer's ague. It's a grand and complex game of celestial rock, paper, scissors. He flips through the almanac to today's date. You see here, he points, the moon is in the house of Scorpio, a water sign. A good day for treating ailments of the bladder. But Mars is in opposition, a terrible time to perform a bloodletting or treat a wound. Your simple digestive tonic, meant to soothe the stomach ruled by the moon, is well timed. You just got lucky. He shows you the recipe you copied for gripe water, the one that's said to administer it when the moon is waxing. Now, you understand why. A waxing moon encourages growth, restoration, and the building up of strength. A waning moon is for cleansing, purging, and reducing, a time for laxatives, not tonics. You listen, and a dozen past lessons begin to click into place with this new framework. The world of medicine is not just a collection of theories, but a series of interlocking systems. A patient's humors determine his internal climate. The doctrine of signatures helps identify the right plant for the right body part, and astrology tells you the right moment to act. It's a stunningly intricate design. Historians of science continue to debate the relationship between the meticulous observations of astrology and the emerging scientific method. Were they seen as competing ideologies, or as two complementary parts of a single, holistic understanding of the universe, where the patterns in the macrocosm of the heavens must surely be reflected in the microcosm of the human body? Your task for the afternoon is no longer to grind herbs, but to plan. The master instructs you to study the almanac and draw up a schedule for the coming week. There is a batch of a Venusian skin salve that should be prepared on Friday, the day of Venus. The Martian herbs for a headache powder should be gathered, if possible, on a Tuesday. You realize that being an apothecary requires not just the knowledge of a physician, but the foresight of an astronomer and the complex scheduling of a modern-day event planner. You lean over the almanac, the cryptic symbols slowly beginning to make sense. You look from the charts of the heavens to the silent jars of herbs on the shelves. They are no longer just plants. They are earthly vessels of planetary energy. The chamomile contains a little piece of the sun, the willow a piece of the moon. The entire shop, you realize, is a model of the cosmos in miniature, its drawers and baskets filled with the captured essences of Jupiter, Mars, and Saturn, all waiting for their auspicious moment to be used. The complexity is overwhelming, but for the first time, it feels like there is a single, elegant system that ties everything together, from the humors in your blood to the stars in the night sky. And you thought just remembering which ones were poisonous was hard. You have spent the last few days with your head buried in the almanac, learning the celestial rhythms that govern the shop. You've learned when to harvest, when to mix, when to administer. This morning, the master consults the charts, cross-references them with his own notes, and makes a solemn announcement. The sun is in a favorable house, Jupiter is ascendant, and the moon is in the perfect phase. The heavens are aligned. Today, he says, you will not be making a simple cough syrup or a poultice for gout. Today, you will assist in the great work, the compounding of theriac. This is a task undertaken only once a year. It is the apothecary's magnum opus, a remedy so legendary, so complex, and so powerful that its name is whispered with a reverence usually reserved for holy relics. The master brings out a separate, specially bound ledger. This book contains only one recipe, its instructions sprawling across several pages. In his spidery script, he explains that theriac, sometimes called Venice treacle, is an ancient formula, first devised for a Roman emperor and refined over centuries. It is not a cure for one thing, but for everything: poison, plague, fever, melancholy, and the vapors. It is the ultimate panacea. In a pot, the preparation begins not with mixing, but with gathering. It feels like you are taking an inventory of the entire world. The master calls out the ingredients, and you spend the better part of the morning scurrying from drawer to barrel to locked cabinet, measuring out powders, roots, seeds, and resins. The sheer number is staggering. The recipe calls for 64 distinct ingredients. You measure out familiar spices like cinnamon and myrrh, precious saffron, and fragrant cardamom. You weigh dried roots like ginger and licorice. But then the list gets stranger. The master directs you to a small, heavily sealed box in the poison cabinet. Inside, you find a desiccated, grayish powder. This, he tells you, Trochisi viperini lozenges made from the dried flesh of vipers, considered an essential ingredient for counteracting any venom. Next, you must measure a precise and significant quantity of thick, dark poppy syrup opium. This gives theriac its unmatched power to quell pain and bring restful sleep, but it is a substance that demands the utmost respect. The shopping list is a summary of global trade, from common herbs that grow in the fields outside the city to rare spices from the Orient and terrifying powders from the bellies of snakes. In great cities like Venice or Paris, the master tells you, the compounding of theriac is a public spectacle. The city's apothecaries work together on a great stage, their actions scrutinized by physicians and officials to ensure the quality and authenticity of the expensive remedy. Here, in your small shop, it is a private ritual. The master locks the front door and hangs a sign indicating he is closed for the day. Today is devoted solely to this sacred task. The compounding itself takes the rest of the day. Every single dry ingredient must be ground to the finest possible powder and then sifted through silk. You and the master take turns at the largest mortar, your arms aching as you pulverize resin after root after spice. The powders are then combined in a specific, unchangeable order in a massive ceramic basin. The master follows the recipe like a priest following a holy text. Finally, into this mountain of complex powder, you begin to mix the honey, not just a jar, but a huge vat of dark, aged honey, which acts as the preservative and carrier. You stir and fold, until the dark, treacle-like paste is uniform. The air is thick with an aroma so complex it defies description. It is spicy, bitter, sweet, floral, earthy, and metallic all at once. It smells like a library, a spice bazaar, and a hospital ward decided to have a baby. As you scrape the thick, black paste from the sides of the basin, you can't help but wonder at the philosophy behind it. Medical and economic historians debate the rationale for Theriac's incredible complexity. Was it a genuine therapeutic belief that a synergy of 64 ingredients created a power that could cure anything? Or was it the ultimate form of brand protection, recipes so convoluted and expensive that it resisted any attempts at counterfeiting and safely justified a price that would make even a wealthy baron blush? As evening falls, the great work is complete. The Theriac, a thick, black, primordial substance, is not bottled for sale. It is carefully transferred to a large, ornate porcelain urn, where it must mature for months, even years, to allow its many virtues to meld and ripen. You stand beside the master, both of you exhausted, looking at the unassuming urn that now contains the most celebrated medicine in the world. You have reached the final boss of apothecary compounding. You have participated in a tradition stretching back to the Caesars, combining all the knowledge you have learned of herbs, minerals, animals, and the stars into a single, all-healing promise. And as you finally wash your hands, you feel you could probably sleep for a week. The great Theriac, the work of a year, rests in its urn. The shop is a mess, a battlefield of used instruments, spilled powders, and sticky residue. The air is thick with the ghost of 64 ingredients. You are bone tired, but the day is not quite over. The master, seeing your exhaustion, assigns you the final tasks, the simple, closing rituals that bring every day to its conclusion. You must clean the tools, and you must sweep the floor. You begin with the great brass scales on the counter. All day, they have sat unused, their purpose too delicate for the gross measurements of the Theriac. Now, you take a soft, clean cloth and meticulously wipe away the dust of the past week's work. You polish the brass pans and the central beam till they gleam with a low, warm light in the fading sun. These scales are the symbol of your trade. The master once told you, they are the promise of accuracy, of honesty, of balance. They must be perfect, because they weigh the ingredients of life and death, and they measure the trust your customers place in you. The scales of the apothecary are cousins to the scales of justice, and they must be treated with the same respect. Next, you move to the mortars and pestles, carrying them one by one to the washing basin. You scrub the sticky honey and dark residue of the Theriac from the great bronze mortar, its sides still smelling of 100 spices. You wash the marble mortar, and as you do, you remember the simple, licorice scent of the aniseed you ground on your very first morning. You clean the heavy stone mortar, and can almost feel the phantom bitterness of the willow bark you crushed for the farmer's son. Each tool is a repository of memory, a direct link to the lessons you have learned. As twilight finally begins to bleed through the front windows, you pause your work for a moment and simply look around. The shop is no longer the bewildering cavern of smells and shadows you first entered. It is a library, and you are finally learning to read the titles. Your eyes no longer see a random pile of leaves. They see the spotted signature of lungwort. You don't just see a hanging bundle of herbs. You see a lunar plant, best harvested in a waxing moon to soothe the Martian fever. You know which drawers hold expensive cures for barons, and which bins hold charitable remedies for farmers. You know the cabinet that holds both beauty and death. You have confronted the unsettling slime of snails and the profound power of a stone from a goat's stomach. You feel like you have graduated from utterly confused to comfortably bewildered, which feels like a monumental achievement. Your final task is to sweep. You take the birch besom from its corner and begin the slow, rhythmic work of clearing the day's detritus from the floorboards. You sweep up spilled seeds, stray leaves, tracked in dust, and the ghosts of the day's worries. The master once told you that this daily sweeping is a ritual, a way of clearing not just the physical dirt, but the lingering humors of the sicknesses that were treated, making the space clean and ready for a new day of healing. Historians of work and labor often debate the nature of these closing rituals. Were they just one more exhausting chore at the end of a long day? Or were they a quiet, meditative part of the craft? You decide. It is mostly a chore, but the meditative part is a decent bonus. With the final swish, you sweep the last of the dust out into the darkening street. The floor is clean. The tools are gleaming. The scales are balanced. The master inspects your work, and for the first time, his usual grunt of non-disapproval is accompanied by the faintest hint of a smile. He latches the heavy shutters, and the shop is plunged into a familiar, fragrant darkness. He turns and shuffles up the stairs to his own quarters, leaving you alone. You stand there for a moment, breathing in the complex perfume of your new life. You are tired in every bone, but it is the satisfying ache of work and learning. You are no longer a stranger here. You are becoming an apothecary. You turn and head for the stairs, your mind fixed on the most powerful and immediate remedy you can imagine, your own small, welcoming bed. And now, your own work is done as well. The last of the day's tasks are finished, and the time for rest has finally arrived. Feel the weight of the day begin to lift from your shoulders, a heavy cloak slipping away into the quiet shadows of your room. The complex scents of the apothecary shop, the sharp spice, and the deep earth, all begin to soften and meld together into a single, gentle, herbal hum, a warm and comforting blanket of fragrance. The story is over, the pages of the journal are closed, and the only task that remains is to let go, to let your mind drift away from the lists of ingredients and the charts of the stars, and to turn inward, toward the simple, quiet rhythm of your own body. Feel the gentle rise and fall of your own breath, the easiest and most natural cadence in the world. There are no remedies to mix, no scales to balance. There is only this moment, this quiet, this growing sense of peace. The shop is sleeping now, resting under the soft light of the moon, gathering its strength for a new day, and you can do the same. You can let the darkness be a soft poultice for your tired mind, drawing out all the worries and thoughts of the day, leaving only stillness and the promise of deep, peaceful, and well-earned rest. Allow your thoughts to dissolve into that gentle, fragrant darkness, letting go and drifting now, deeper and deeper, into sleep.